Welcome to this episode. Today I'm joined by Dr. Line Hollmann. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Line is based in Barcelona and has got a very interesting journey. She's going to tell us what's the reason she came to Barcelona and how is it to work in a completely different country. I understand that originally you were from the Netherlands.
Yeah, so I was trained as a doctor in the Netherlands, and during my studies I was very interested in seeing how different cultures run their medical affairs, and so I did a couple of internships abroad and I really liked it, and so it got into my mind that once I finished med school I would love to travel the world and spend some months in South America studying Spanish and then end up for some reason in Buenos Aires and work there as a doctor to enhance my training. In the end, it didn't really quite work out like that. So I met my current partner, I met Mark, and I convinced him to quit his job and to join traveling with me. And we really enjoyed. We spent some time in South America and also in Asia. But the deal was to, after our trip, to go back to the Netherlands because he really enjoyed living in the Netherlands. He is originally from Barcelona, so we spent a couple of extra years in the Netherlands. I did my medical training for a GP in the Netherlands, and after working a couple of extra years I finally managed to convince him to move to Barcelona, to move back where he is originally from, so his family is here, and for me to start a new chapter of my medical career and to open a practice here in Barcelona.
So out of so many places you could work, why did you choose Barcelona?
Well, I think a very straightforward thing is because the family of my partner is here, and so that makes it easy to move here. Also, there is quite a big international group of people. So my Spanish is decent, but I'm not comfortable enough to work really in the public Spanish system. So I realized that if I would want to work abroad, I would either have to choose a country that is native English speaking, or that has a lot of expats that there's not yet a good market for to support them medically. And I knew from family members here that there's actually very little English speaking doctors here. That made it a little bit more of an opportunity for me to actually be having a possibility of opening a practice here and make it work. So it's a bit of both, a bit of private and a bit of practical reasons why we chose Barcelona, besides the fact that the city is really nice.
Yeah, that's indeed very true. So many things, like you've got the beach, you've got a nice park, and it's very good vibe here.
I'm happy to hear that you enjoy it. Yeah, the weather is nice, there's beaches, the culture is interesting, the people are very friendly, you can eat very well.
So what were the things that you had to do before starting to set up your practice here?
First biggest challenge was getting my medical diplomas qualified here. So depending on to which country you move to, there are different requirements. So luckily, Barcelona is within the EU, Spain is within the EU, so that makes it slightly easier to have your diplomas validated. So I had to run a lot of paperwork. That mainly was the thing, just piles of paperwork proving that all my studies have been completed successfully, that I am medically actively working in the Netherlands, that I don't have any lawsuits against me, that I was still allowed to run my practice in the Netherlands, and that just took approximately a year to have all the paperwork completed. And then coming here, there was another set of challenges. If you want to open a practice, you need to be registered in the tax office, in a medical board. Again, mainly a lot of paperwork. You need to just continue going. And once everything was settled in terms of paperwork and I got my license and everything was registered and I had my insurances, then the next step was finding a location where I could practice.
I just want to check with you. So did you have any experience at all of the Spanish healthcare system before making the application? Because that's still a lot of work and not knowing much how is this going to pan out.
Yes, I had no experience whatsoever. So I think thankfully Mark, my partner, was a great support. So we we did a lot of homework technically to study what were the requirements. We called a lot of times the Ministry of Health to ask what were the requirements. Sadly, sometimes there's a bit of discrepancy between what is put online and what is actually the case. So the fact that my partner was a native Spanish-speaking person that could just call up the health authorities and ask repeatedly the same question, and at one point if you get 5 times the different answer, but then out of those answers 3 are sort of similar, you kind of know which way you have to move towards. There are actually quite a bit of people who did the same procedure, because I'm not, of course, the only doctor from the Netherlands moving to Spain. The majority of the people that I know actually hired a lawyer to help them in the procedure, because there are people that have done this thing more often. I'm sure if you do that, it runs a little bit more smooth, but for us it was also a kind of a nice experience to go through it all ourselves and to really figure out how it had to be.
So just to give us a bit of background, what does your partner Mark do?
He's an architect, so he doesn't do anything in the medical field. He does have family members who are doctors, so his uncle is an orthopedic surgeon and his niece is a surgeon. So we also benefited a little bit from their knowledge as well.
I see. So all the paperwork done, a lot of headache and frustration, I suppose, and you've managed to get all this sorted. Now, what's the next step? You found your location as well. Like, can you talk us through your first clinic?
So in the beginning, I founded the clinic actually with a co-partner, with Femke. It was really nice to have the collaboration of also a foreign doctor. She's also Dutch. And she had a clinic in Cyprus, so she did also have a bit more experience in founding clinics abroad. We started the clinic, Barcelona Family Doctor, having 2 locations, one here in Barcelona and one in Castelldefels, which is where she's from. It's a town a little bit south from Barcelona. So we started this thing together, and making sure that we would cover the full week to make sure that we would always have availability. And then it was the quest, a little bit of searching for patients, or at least letting us be heard, let the people know that we were out there. So we did a lot of work on social media. We thought that, the majority of the people, expats who are here in Barcelona, they also are searching for information, contacts, and we started to use the same kind of platforms to promote that we are there. And that seemed to be working. So slowly, bit by bit, we got more patients. And as soon as you have patients and you make them happy and you have a good relationship and they trust you, they also tell their friends and family that we're here. And that seemed to work.
Right. So yeah, the first part of building that patient population is quite hard, but once you've got it going, then it's a momentum that keeps going, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to see at the moment. So the clinic is now up and running for approximately 2 years, I think. And the first year it was very slow. Little by little it got better and better, and I think now I'm at a point where I'm not there where I want to be, but I'm definitely going towards that direction, so that really is a great comfort.
That's great. So tell us, what's a typical day for you?
My typical day, it's quite diverse. So besides the clinic, besides being a doctor, I'm a mother. I have a small boy, he's 2-year-old. He's called Aran, and depending on which day, I also have to do a lot of things with him. I haven't mentioned this to you before, but he has a mobility problem. He has a motoric delay, most likely due to some problems during the pregnancy. So he needs to see quite a bit of doctors and therapists himself. So depending on the day, we bring him to physio or to logopeda or to other kind of therapists. And the rest of the day I work. So I partially work here in the clinic, usually half day or a full day. And I also do some work for the Netherlands still. So I assist 2 practices in the Netherlands for half days. So depending on the day, it's actually quite a bit of difference.
So it sounds like you've got a varied role and also quite busy with family commitment with your child as well. Mm-hmm. So how do you think of work-life balance, Lena?
My work-life balance is currently not exactly where I want it to be. I think taking everything in, I am currently doing a big investment. So that is why I still work a little bit for the Netherlands. I'm starting to build my clinic, but it's not fully running yet. And of course, there are some things with my child that need some extra time. So in terms of work-life balance, I would love to see things changing, and I would love to have things a little bit better, a little bit better in balance. And I'm striving very much forward towards that, because it would be needed, because at the moment it's pretty hectic.
I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of GPs in the UK also found that their work is very hectic, and it's quite challenging to not only work in general practice, but to be in a different country and also having to juggle other roles as well. So what things that have you found quite useful that you've implemented?
I think in general the Spanish lifestyle is very helpful. I think in if you talk in stereotypes, the people here are more calm. They really live more in the moment. There is in general life a little bit less stress, or a little bit less certain things to strive for, which I find, at least in the Netherlands, quite present in society. So that helps me, knowing that I don't have to fulfill all those marks. I don't have to join the rat race in that sense. So that is supportive. The other thing that's supportive is that if you go out, it's always nice and sunny weather. So if you have a little bit of time, you can just sit on a bench and sit in the sun and eat some of the nice food. That helps really relaxing. At least for me, it helps really relax. Those things, I think, are the most important things. It's funny that my life now is more hectic, most likely, than it was when I was living in the Netherlands. Even though I made this change because I assumed that the easygoing lifestyle would be more fitting with me as a person and with life in general. And sometimes life brings you sort of unexpected things, or things you have to, or at least that I think at the moment we have to continue going a little bit. But as soon as I would have the possibility, I hope I can find myself sitting on that bench a little bit more often.
That's right, yeah, because you've come here now, you need to enjoy it a little bit more, I guess.
Yes, of course. The enjoying was also a little bit complicated with the fact of COVID the last couple of years. So we entered here just in the middle of the first wave, or maybe just a little bit after that. So the country was quite locked. We couldn't leave the city. It was not allowed to even leave the municipality. So that also brought a lot of emphasis to just stay indoors, and therefore having more possibility to invest time in other fields. And I hope now that COVID hopefully seems to be reducing a little bit, and I hope that continues to be the case, then also the rest of the things can develop a little bit more.
That's right, yeah. I can only imagine how difficult it has been for you to actually start a clinic during the middle of COVID, especially if you're doing it again.
It is not ideal, and I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, we made all the plans. We already had renters in our house. The jobs were already cancelled, and then COVID came. It was really not planned, and at that time, when it all started, we thought, well, should we put it all on hold? Should we stay here in the Netherlands, where at least, certain things there are things that are uncertain, but there are a little bit more certainties here. But we really felt like going, so we just did it. Sometimes you also have to, make the gamble, and luckily the gamble worked out okay. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
From your experience then, what are the things that have you found different from the Dutch healthcare system and the Spanish one?
There's actually quite a bit of changes or differences. The healthcare in the Netherlands, it's a system that is it's officially public, but it's actually a sort of semi-public, semi-private system, where for example, all the GPs there run their own clinic, but the patients have their obligatory health insurance, and the doctors get paid via the health insurance. So it's a little bit of a triangle. Here in Spain, the public and the private are very different, separate systems. So you have the public healthcare, where the doctors are being paid by the government, where all of the people are having the possibility to get free healthcare, free medication, all free treatments. But there's also a rather strong private system on the side. So the public system works great because it's very financially very accessible, but it has long waiting times, really long waiting times. And the private system profits from that because they can offer more opportunity to be seen earlier, but they ask more money for it. And that system we don't really have in the Netherlands. So technically everything is for everybody the same. So for me, it was getting here. It was understanding how that works, and also now that I run my own practice, it's also starting to get to know all my different colleagues, and which colleagues speak English or which don't, because a large amount of doctors here in Spain don't really speak English, or not to a level where people are very comfortable with. So for me, it was a bit of a challenge to find my colleague private doctors who offer good quality of care and who work with the same kind of mindset or mentality, but also who just speak the languages that my patients speak. And that is something that I'm still building on my contacts, and that will just enhance over the years, I hope. But I think that is the biggest change or difference between the work that I do now at the moment here in Spain as what I was doing in the Netherlands.
I see. So completely different system where you have two healthcare providers, private and public, in parallel. If I understand correctly from your bio, is that you also work for expats back in the Netherlands. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I was working in a company actually. So besides my work as a GP, I was working in a private company that provides healthcare for expats and for seafarers. So what often is the problem for expats coming into the Netherlands or Dutch expats moving away from the Netherlands is that they need some sort of support in the country where they go to. And this company was providing that healthcare service. So they help bigger companies set up their network in a foreign country so that they would know where good hospitals were, which doctors they could call if one of their employees would be ill. And once in a while, if the people would be in the Netherlands, we gave them some health checks and some advices what to do. And there were also the other way around. So there were expats coming into the Netherlands who were having trouble finding a GP or whose company provided extra services, which is not very common. Medical checks, for example, is not very common to do in the Netherlands. But some people are very comfortable being able to do that. So this company was also providing medical services, and in my case, me being a GP, I was being able to help them with their common health complaint.
When you actually moved to work with expat here, what communities have you seen? Because I understand there's various like German, English communities here. What have your experience been?
I think being a Dutch doctor, there's also a big Dutch community here, and a large part of my patients are from the Dutch community. I think at least half is Dutch. I've seen quite a bit of English people, German, and Asian. So Chinese, South Korea, also Japanese. I think there's also a big group of Italian and French people here in Barcelona. But there are Italian and French-speaking doctors here, and I'm assuming that they are more comfortable in visiting a doctor who can speak their own native language. So I've not seen that many of them. So I would say the majority of my clientele is really Dutch.
I see. So tell us, how did you learn Spanish? Because you can speak 3 different languages, I understand.
So I mainly learned it while practicing. So I did 2 very short courses of Spanish in the Netherlands, and I've traveled with my partner a couple of months in South America. By that time, I couldn't speak a single word, so I did the courses afterwards, and I practiced with my family-in-law, with the friends of my partner, and slowly it started to build. And I love to read, so I'm a little bit of a book nerd. So I decided to read the books that I've already read in Dutch or in English. I started to reread them in Spanish. And that really helped increase my vocabulary, and just while practicing, I really learned a bit more.
That's a good point. I always think like, how do you learn a language? And this is the first time I've heard somebody saying they've reread books in the other language. That's a good tip. You also said that you've had experience of South America. Tell us a little bit about what was experience working there.
No, so I haven't worked in South America. That was the original idea, but I in the end, since my partner and I agreed to go back to the Netherlands, I've never really worked there. So where I did work was as an intern. I worked in Melbourne, in a hospital there in the Alfred, and in Australia, and it was really different kind of atmosphere. It was super high tech, one of the best running emergency departments in the world, and for sure better than anything I've ever seen. My other experience of working abroad was, for example, in a clinic in Nepal. I was there also as an intern in a very small public hospital in just outside of Kathmandu, of the capital, and there I've seen the other extreme. It's a really poor community there. There couldn't be, also culturally speaking, people don't really talk about having cancer. That is not really seen as openly something you want to discuss with people, not even with your own doctor, not even the doctor with the patient itself. The patient would be sent outside, and then the doctor would speak with the family members, for example. So I've seen quite a bit of extremes in how you can deal with health. I think it's quite interesting now that I'm here in Spain, people also and seeing a lot of different people from different backgrounds. It really helps knowing that people experience health in a different way. The way we work in the healthcare system in the Netherlands is one way. And also we communicate in a certain way that very often in the rest of the world is being seen as rather blunt, at least very direct. Dutch people love to say it's honest, but some other people might find it very direct and difficult sometimes. So knowing that you have different kind of backgrounds and different kinds of ways of communicating and dealing with information, knowing that there are these kind of differences, it helps in a way that you can communicate with your patients. So I try to always adjust my sense of communication and my style of communication to the people that I'm speaking with, to try to match with their needs and their ways of living.
Some GPs like to keep things interesting. What are the things that you like to do besides just clinical patient history and assessing patients? Do you do anything like a minor surgery?
Yeah, that's actually, I do that. That's one of the main reasons why I chose to be a GP, because I think being a GP, you have the possibility of having a very versatile job. So not only the clinical work, but also a bit more practical work, as in indeed minor surgeries or gynecology procedures. So in the Netherlands, it's quite common during your GP studies to be trained in those kind of procedures, and I love doing that. So I asked to be trained in that, and so coming here, I try to do the same and I offer the same to my patients here as I was comfortable in doing in the Netherlands. So I still do minor procedures. Would love to be able to do more. I would love to at one point have a small portable ultrasound machine. I think this kind of technological developments that we have at the moment that we can really benefit from. But that is something that I'm putting for a little bit later in my career.
Quite exciting. I know some GPs who use it, and it's quite a good thing to have in your toolkit. Tell us what are the things that you like to do outside of medicine? Have you got any passions outside of medicine?
So I really just love to meet my friends, have my family come over, and enjoy the nice things that the city and the lifestyle here in Spain has to offer. So if I have a tiny bit of opportunity, I want to be outside, I love to walk, I love to be in the nature, have hikes. You have beautiful beaches here that in just half an hour drive and you're in a really, really nice surrounding. So that is what I really try to do when we have a little bit more time. And besides that, I try to create a little bit of smaller kind of retreats. So I love to do yoga. So I try to do yoga every morning before the whole morning ritual starts with waking up kids and going to school and going to work. I try to at least have 15 or 20 minutes to do a little bit of exercise and just to calm the mind and the body, and that's something I really enjoy doing.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's so important for doctors to look after themselves first, because without that, then it's going to be more difficult and not sustainable to keep going in a very challenging job.
I think it is difficult. I also think that there are people who are very capable of putting that off and not thinking of that. But I think in the type of job that we have, that there's a constant stream of information and people, and you constantly have to be very present. And we all feel that at least I think a lot of my colleagues feel that you can't work at 80% of your capabilities. You have to work at 100% because people ask it from you and you don't want to give anything less than that. But it's very demanding. And you can do it for a little bit of time, but I think if you do it for many, many years, at one point, it's going to cost more. And in the current world that we live in, where there's not only work, but there's also a lot of other things besides work that demand a lot of attention, I think it's important to keep in mind that somehow we need to get things a bit better balance.
So thank you very much for taking the time and telling us a little bit about your story. I just wanted to ask you one last question about what are the few things that you wish you knew somebody told you before you came and working?
Before I came to Spain, I wish someone would have told me that the paperwork really takes a lot of time. I think with that, the lesson to be learned is also to be patient. That sometimes things don't always fall your way, that you have to be having a lot of perseverance and just continue going. And I think, of course, a lot of people might know that when they move abroad, but feeling it and living it is something else. I don't have a magical tip that will make it easier, but I think if you have this in your mentality, if you keep in mind that things will not go smooth, things will be a little bit of a rocky road in the beginning and you have to invest a little bit. If you're willing to do that, I think you can really pick the fruits of that labor later on.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights and your experience, Lina. And I wish you all the best in your practice to continue growing it and hopefully to make sure that you get some time for yourself as well.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. There's so many insights here.
If you found this video useful, then I've got another video that I'm sure you're going to enjoy watching. Click the video to watch it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.